Welcome to Kickin' with the Rickens, redefining retirement. Gerry Ricken and Heidi Ricken Provost want to help you retire with purpose and live with joy. Find more information, including how to reach the team, in today's show notes. Now, Kickin' with the Rickens, powered by Ricken Financial.
Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening to Kick In with the Rickens podcast. We are here with retirement planner Heidi Ricken Provost and licensed insurance professional Gerry Ricken. My name is Mark Owens. We invite you to get more at rickenfinancial.com. You can get all the information here in the show notes. Thanks again for subscribing. Now, let's get to the show. Today, actually, the closing ceremonies have already aired. Is that correct? I know it's going to air tonight for real. But aren't we on such a delay?
They've already occurred. They're occurring probably about right now.
Yeah, right now. Okay, but we'll actually see it on TV here tonight. And y'all have the Olympic fever. You're big Olympic fans.
We are huge Olympic fans. I had the opportunity in 2002 to run with the actual Olympic torch when we ran through the United States for the Salt Lake Games, and in memory of our daughter Mary Beth. And it was such an unbelievable evening and I only had to run a quarter mile, thank God, because I'm not a runner. but I either run to something or from something, but I was running to the next recipient of the torch so I could pass on that flame. But it was such an awe-inspiring moment, and we're very passionate about the Olympics.
I mean, we kind of love our country, and we love everyone that represents us, whether they're in our armed forces or the Olympics. So we're all about supporting our own.
I made through the past couple of weeks with the Olympics on, and we've said it before, we keep it on 24/7 in the Owens household. We love it. I like summer a little bit better, but I do love the Winter Olympics. Anytime they do a podium and Americans got the gold and they played the national anthem, I make it a point, whatever we're doing in the house, especially I'll grab Caroline. All right, Caroline, come here. And we stand there at attention and we listen to the national anthem. And we get done, we all start screaming, USA, USA. So it's a fun little tradition in the Owens household. But a lot of great moments to take away. And you made a comment before we got rolling here about the preparation involved with Olympic athletes is not so different, maybe not as physical, but it's almost like what you do every day at Ricken Financial.
Well, it takes a huge team effort to prepare for the Olympics. It's just not the athlete. It's the trainers, it's the coaches, it's the family, it's the support system, it's the donors. It's a huge, huge operation. And it takes a team to make that plan work and to develop the plan. And then when the Olympian shows up, they need to execute that plan. Well, sometimes, you're in a bobsled and you hit the side and you lose a second or two and it knocks you off the podium. You may be an ice skater and you may fall on the ice and touch the ice and it knocks some technical points down. Or, unfortunately, you could be like Lindsey Vonn and have a broken leg and completely not only ruin your opportunity for this Olympiad, but maybe have permanent damage for the rest of your lives. Yeah. So it's not unlike what we do in retirement planning.
Because all of these athletes, they have contingent plans out there. Just because the coach that they've been working with for the last 22 years says, here's how we're training for this thing, doesn't mean that's the only thing they're doing to train for. I don't know if you are. Do you guys get any of this stuff on your social media about okay, watch this workout and tell me what sport this Olympian does? Because when you watch these things, I am telling you, the preparation is intense. And it's unfortunate what happened to Lindsey Vonn, because a lot of these workouts that these Olympians are doing is simulating what happens if you have an oopsie, how do we recover? And that's exactly what we do every single day when it comes to your finances. Some of this stuff is in our control. Some of this stuff is not in our control. We can't control the weather. The Olympians, they can't control the weather. They can't control what lane they're going to be in, all that kind of stuff. Well, there's some stuff we can't control, but there is some stuff we can control when it comes to our finances and our retirement. And one thing we can control is a plan. And you might have saved for 20, 30, 40 years for retirement and stuck it in one investment. Well, an investment's not a plan, it's an investment. So we need to put a plan in place that can handle the contingencies. And one of the first contingencies we talk about with all of our clients is if you're in your working years, it looks a little different than when you're retired, but what do your emergency funds look like? Because we can all have those what if moments, those in case of emergency moments.
Yeah.
And you need to ensure that you're going to be okay for tomorrow if that what if occurs. So that's really the first place that we need to put some contingency in place is what if that emergency occurs, something outside of the norm of your realm of expenses, or during your working years, what if you lose your job? All of these what ifs that keep us awake at night. We want to ensure that you have a plan that can handle all of them. After those emergency funds, then we also set money aside for the future.
And when you set money aside for the future, putting all your eggs in one basket is probably not the best idea. And a lot of people, they just set it and forget it. And setting it, forgetting it may not be necessarily the right thing either, because maybe it's just the way you set it up initially and you never went back to it. And I'm talking about your 401k plan. And maybe that's in traditional, maybe it's in Roth, maybe it's in a mixture of both. Maybe it's in, you just don't know how you're investing or what the percentage is or anything like that, because you just set it up and you don't know what's happening right now.
And when you're working, it's normal to set it and forget it. We just stick money aside in our plan, in that 401k, in that 403b, in that TSP, whatever we have to save for at work. It's normal to just set it, forget it. And most of us just choose to target fund for someday down the line. And then, okay, we'll get towards retirement and we'll deal with it then. That might be the appropriate strategy if you're more than 5 years out from retirement. But once you're on the precipice of retirement, target funds are putting all of your eggs in one basket. If that's where the majority of your assets live, is in this employee-sponsored plan or your IRA or anywhere else, and it's in one target fund, you may actually set yourself up for more risk than you'd be comfortable with. Now, every single person we meet with is going to have a different answer for what their level of comfort truly is. However, if everything's in a target fund, there is a common misconception that you can't lose money in a target fund because it gets quote unquote more conservative as you get older and closer to that target date. Well, the unfortunate reality is we have seen people during the 2008-9 financial crisis lose 30, 40, 50% of their target funds when they were in retirement. We don't want something like that to happen to you. If there's a bump in the road, we want you to be the Olympian that needs to recover from a 0.5 second mistake in their figure skating, not the Lindsey Vonn. We don't want everything to completely fall apart on you and wreck your financial future. And it's going to start really with your risk tolerance. And you may or may not know what your risk tolerance is, but if you want to dive into that, please give us a call at 314-207-6211 and we'll chat about it. Because as I mentioned, every person's going to have a different risk tolerance and a different investment picture. Every part of your plan will be different from the person down the road. So unfortunately, when we stand at this water cooler and hear our buddy talk about, oh, this target fund's done great for me, yada, yada, that may or may not be the best case for you.
And, we're not saying target funds are bad. Target funds have a place in everyone's portfolio or most people's portfolio. But putting all of it into a target fund is what we've seen in the past, because it's a set it and forget it mentality. And you just really don't even know what that target fund is. It just says target fund, whatever the date is. And you're relying on someone who doesn't necessarily know your risk tolerance. So knowing your risk tolerance, like Heidi said, is the most important thing you can do. And then investing based on that risk tolerance.
Of course. And every single one of us is going to have a different answer for what makes sense. Now, just because we're saying it may or may not be best for you to have 100% of your funds in that target, that doesn't mean that you get rid of it. Maybe you have a portion there, but you might need something that offers more protection for you. You might need something that places you at higher risk. You never really know. Every single person's going to be different. And one investment is probably not going to be the answer for you in retirement, because if you think about it, one strategy, well, what if something happens to one piece of that strategy? Everything could fall apart. if you have a couple different strategies working towards the same goal simultaneously together, and you have some what we call negative correlation in your investments, so that let's say the stock market corrects. Well, if everything is going to go down, if everything's correlated in your portfolio, it's all going to go down together. If you have some negative correlation, that piece is probably not going to lose and it might even go up. So you just want to ensure that you're taking calculated risks over the course of all of your investments. And by doing that, you're setting yourself up for the contingency plan of what if. Because the beautiful thing about the finances for Lindsey Vonn, at least, is that she has plenty of money and she wasn't ensuring that winning this Olympic medal was going to make or break her finances.
Mm-hmm.
But the unfortunate reality is she may lose her leg because of something that was not necessarily in her control.
Right.
It was a tiny little mistake that could derail everything. We don't want a tiny little mistake to derail all of the hard work that you've put in for decades to make it to retirement.
Talking about some of the speed bumps in life to prepare for and the speed bumps that you see every day at Ricken Financial. Let's break some of those down. What do you see? What are some of the steps you take to help people overcome these unexpected situations?
Well, I'd say the first speed bump we typically see are people who think that they can just simply DIY their retirement, and they may not have access to all the tools that they need to ensure that they're going to be okay. You know, unfortunately, we're human beings, and sometimes we allow emotion to make our financial decisions. And we typically come across that the most when we are working with people who have previously just DIY'd their plan, because it's pretty darn hard to put all of this together without thinking with a little bit of emotion.
Especially when it comes to your finances, because finances can be very, very emotional for a lot of people. Because if the market goes up, everybody's elated. If the market goes down, you're upset. It does prey on your emotions. So taking the emotions out and relying on someone else is probably a great way to avoid that speed bump.
Of course, because whoever you're working with, if they're not thinking with math and logic to make the correct decisions for you, you're probably working with the wrong person. You know, the unfortunate reality is we are human beings, and so sometimes emotions do get in our way. However, you don't want your emotions to derail everything for you. But let's speak about a couple emotional things that can occur to you that are a speed bump in retirement and how you can kind of navigate those. Not necessarily emotionally, we are not therapists, but how do you financially navigate the emotional moments that are going to occur? Because you're in retirement. What if you lose your spouse? What's going to happen? Well, obviously, that's going to be a very emotional and trying time for you. But that should not be the point in time that you have to come up with a plan now for navigating that. You want to ensure that you have a plan for the what if we lose one of the two of us? Because the reality is, here's what's going to happen. If you're on Social Security right now, the lower of the two Social Security payments is going to go away, and you'll only have the higher of the two Social Security payments remaining after you lose your spouse. Then after the first year of loss, you're going to go back down to single tax rates. So the taxation is going to increase. Well, what if your spouse was receiving a pension? If they didn't choose survivorship, you may lose out on some pension income coming in too. If they had IRAs, those IRAs become your own. And yes, you can spread it over the course of your lifetime, but every single piece of your plan has to slightly change to accommodate for that loss there. And that's not the point in time that we want you to have to rework every single thing. We want you to be able to take the time to grieve and just live through it. And our plan will help you navigate it, ensuring that as life changes and you need to make tiny little tweaks here and there, you're going to be okay. Because that's the point in time it's really going to hurt most, is when you no longer have the partner to rely on. That might also include, you don't even know if your partner was the one that paid the bills. You might not even know how to pay the bills, where to pay the bills, any of that. So that's a plan we'll help you put together too, to ensure that the day-to-day household CEO finances are captured somewhere, as well as the big picture.
And you know, Heidi mentioned putting a plan together. The plan isn't just a document. The plan involves Heidi and I sitting down with you and helping you every step along the way. We want to be there, especially when life sets those challenges up for you and you do lose your spouse. We want to be there to help you, guide you, and let you know it's going to be okay because you planned well with your spouse. They're no longer there, but we're still there with you to help you and guide you and lead you so that you don't have the stresses of the finances that we already have designed in that plan to take away.
So that's going to include a quote unquote emergency fund for, where are you going to draw the income immediately to cover the services of losing a loved one? And, maybe there's some life insurance proceeds coming in or something like that. If you don't have a plan of some sort in place, that's when it's going to hit pretty hard. And so we'd love to put a plan together for you so that if that what if speed bump does occur, because unfortunately, at some point in time, we're all going to have to pass away. That's just how life works. And since death is inevitable, we want to ensure that you're prepared with the money so that you get to enjoy the time that you have with your family and you get to truly give yourself the time to grieve and work through it. And sometimes the topics we sit down and talk about are pretty heavy, but at the end of the day, if you have a plan that can weather the storm, it's not going to feel as heavy in that moment when you're already feeling the weight of your emotion and your loss. We don't want you to feel the weight of the finances too. So let's put a plan together that can handle that speed bump. Give us a call at 314-207-6211 so we can begin. And let's chat about a couple other speed bumps you might hit in the road, Gerry.
The market it almost seems like every week there's an all-time high.
Yeah.
It just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. And we've seen this in the past. We've seen this in the 80s. We've seen it in the 90s. We've seen it in the 2000s. We've seen it in the 2010s. We've seen it in 2020s. But there have been corrections along the way. And those corrections can hurt if you're not prepared for them. And what I mean not being prepared is not investing based on your risk tolerance. So when the market corrects, we want to make sure that, you don't correct with it. And when I say correct, crash, we don't want you falling on the floor, with your entire portfolio. We want to have some safety and some speed bumps that don't hurt as bad. When you go over those speed bumps, there isn't a big pothole on the other side of the speed bump. So we want to make sure that you have some protection and you know what would happen in the event that a market correction occurred and it went down. What would happen to your portfolio? What would happen to your plan? It's all about matching your risk tolerance with your investing.
And that's going to start with a risk analysis. What type of risk are you comfortable taking overall with all of your investments? And then being strategic about each individual investment and what type of risk it's taking, because sometimes it makes sense for a portion of your portfolio to be at higher risk than you're currently at, and a portion of your portfolio to be at lower risk than you're currently at. But it doesn't mean that there's, one size fits all situation to ensure that you're matching your risk tolerance. But let's liken it this way. Right now, if you're not matching your risk tolerance and you're driving 70 miles per hour, I don't want you to hit a speed bump where you go sailing into the car in front of you and total it. Maybe hit a little bit of a speed hump where it just slows you down and you go back to driving normally. At the end of the day, we don't know what the market's going to do. That is completely out of our control. But if we're logically and mathematically meeting your risk tolerance, you're going to be okay no matter what the market does. So we need to ensure that your plan's going to weather that storm, whether it's a speed bump or a speed hump in the road in front of you when it comes to your market risk.
Market risk is people do tend to use emotion when they think about the market because, oh my gosh, and people chase returns. It isn't about chasing returns. And what I mean by chasing returns is this thing went up. Joe told me that his investment went up 25% last year. So I'm going to get in that. Well, guess what? Joe may not be the best person to rely on. And you don't know what that company is going to face in the future. So it's all about looking at it methodically, looking at it mathematically, and looking at it logically, and trying to take as much emotion out of the process as possible because mistakes can be made out of emotion.
So let's talk about mathematics because there's a huge mathematical formula that we get to navigate annually each year, and it's called taxation. So, what if we have saved all of our money and our 401k, IRA, our retirement plan for the future, those traditional retirement funds. And then if you're born, let's say in 1958, and you hit age 73, and you forget to take your required minimum distribution. Your required minimum distribution, your RMD, is a percentage of the funds in those traditional accounts that the IRS is dictating you have to take out at a certain age. It's either going to be age 73 or 75, depending upon what year you're born, or you're already taking them and you're aware of it. But what if we didn't plan for this and it gets missed? Well, you're going to have to pay a tax penalty of 25% of what you should have taken as income. You can get a one-time mea culpa from the IRS and they'll knock that penalty down to 10%. But the gist is, we don't want you to be subject to any additional tax that you shouldn't have otherwise been paying. Yes, we believe in paying our fair share of taxation, but we also believe in structuring everything so that you have the correct withdrawal order and you're not paying above your taxation. You're planning for when the IRS is going to dictate you need to take money out of your accounts. You're utilizing the different tax structures of everything that you've saved in so that they best work for you. Because the tax code was actually designed so that we could minimize taxation if we utilize it properly. But without having that plan in place, those what ifs could occur. And if you miss an RMD, that speed bump's pretty rough because I don't want to have to pay the IRS 25% of what I should have gotten as income as a penalty. I don't want to have to pay the IRS a penalty at all. Mm-hmm. So let's ensure that your plan sets you up for success and you don't have to pay penalties that you otherwise could avoid.
Heidi, you mentioned off the air that there is still the number one question that adults ask you, whether they're planning for retirement, whether they're in retirement. It's still the number one question that adults have, and almost a fear, if you will, about retirement. What is that?
Have I saved enough? Am I going to be okay?
Yep, there it is.
And, Gerry and I see this more often than not. The people that are asking that question are usually the ones who are okay. And if you're not concerned about that for retirement, you may or may not be okay. But at the end of the day, we are so ingrained in society. We're these creatures of habit. You hear something at least 7 times, it sticks to memory, and you think it's Bible. For years and years and years, think about all those commercials we were exposed to that says, what's your number? You need to have this saved. And all these talking heads out there, you Google something, or you come across it on social media, or once a week, there's an article that says, this is the dollar amount you need saved to retire in this zip code or whatever. I don't know, have a clue where those people are coming up with those numbers, because let me tell you, people can effectively retire whether they have nothing saved or $10 million saved. It has nothing to do with some blanket number and everything to do with you. And what do I mean by that, Gerry?
Well, what are your expenses on a monthly basis? What are your desires? What do you want to do with your money? Do you want to leave something behind? There are all kinds of different avenues that we explore with you, and we want to make sure that we put the right car down that avenue and making sure that we are planning the way you want your life to work out. So when we think about what's your number, it's really how much income do you need on a daily, monthly, annual, quarterly, semi-annual, however periodic basis. That's what we're talking about.
And it starts with Social Security. When are you going to draw your Social Security benefits and how much are they going to be? And then do you have a pension? And if you're going to take a pension, are the Social Security and the pension enough to cover your current expenses? Because there's this common misconception. People think that when they retire, they're going to spend less money. Mm-hmm. And the reality is most people spend more money in retirement than they did in their working years. Because when you're working, you don't have time. You don't get to travel as much. You don't get to go out to eat with your friends. All these things that you don't have the time to do. Now that time is yours, we find time is money. People usually spend more money in retirement than they do in their working years, especially towards the beginning of retirement when you still have the energy and the ability to go and do the things.
Can I just say, and I hate to interrupt you, you're painting that picture, and all I can think right now is about my mom, who retired about 5 years ago. And what's so funny is she used to spoil the grandkids on the weekends. Now she's spoiling the grandkids on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, and on the weekends as well. So little extra couple of days of and of course, what do grandparents do? We're going to spoil the crap out of our grandkids. And she gets the biggest kick out of doing that. She loves doing it. But yes, you're right. It's more money that she wouldn't have normally spent in her working years.
Of course. And if your guaranteed income coming in is not enough to cover that, that's when the number matters. So if your guaranteed income is enough to cover all of your needs and all of your wants, you probably will have a little less to worry about in retirement. However, you need to ensure that keeps pace with inflation, and that'll cover you in those one-offs and what-ifs. But if you don't have enough guaranteed income coming in to cover your expenses, you're not alone. Most Americans who retire do not have enough guaranteed income coming in nowadays to cover their expenses with their needs and their wants.
Especially net after tax. Because a lot of people think, if I'm spending X dollars and Social Security and my pension equals that X dollars, then I'm going to be okay. They forget that there's a tax due on the dollars coming in.
Every person we meet with has a different answer for what that's going to look like, because every single person in America has a different tax situation. So when we take a look at that, if you need income outside of the guaranteed sources of income, that's going to be the first point in time that number that you've saved is actually going to matter. It's going to matter where you've saved it, how you've saved it, how it's invested, how much income it's going to kick off, which of these investments is going to be where we take the withdrawals from, how much tax do we need to account for, all of those nuances. And if you're sitting here and you're like, I don't even know how I could come up with that, guess what? You're not alone, because you don't sit here as a retirement planner planning for people's retirement every single day. So you may need the help of a retirement planner to ensure that what you have saved is enough. Because at the end of the day, it's a very difficult decision to all of a sudden put the onus on you for your retirement when for all of your working years, your employer was paying you. So, you might need some help to walk through all of the different nuances to know if you have saved enough, and we'd love to help you with that. Just give us a call at 314-207-6211 so we can build out your purpose approach. What do you want to do with your time? What does your guaranteed income look like today? What is it going to look like in the future? And how much do we need saved? Where do we need it saved? And how are we spending it down so that it works for your purpose in your retirement?
I want to go back to something you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Heidi. We said the number one question that adults have to and through retirement is, will I have the income to last as long as I do? And you said the ones who ask are usually okay. Well, how often do you have somebody come sit down with you and say, am I doing okay? I think I'm doing fine. And you have to say, no, we got some work to do.
We have had those difficult conversations, and they are difficult conversations to have because the numbers don't lie. We forecast the numbers, and all of a sudden there's a red line that says, you guys are out of money. You're not out of your guaranteed income, your Social Security, whatever, but you've used all of your assets, and you have to either change your lifestyle, which no one wants to do, or we need to figure out,
how to make that money work that hard for you.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And a lot of it comes down to taxation later in life. And when we look at that, we want to make sure that you understand where you're saving, how that's going to be taxed in the future. And if there is a shortfall, if we have some time before you actually retire, maybe you're planning on retiring in a year, we may have to work another year. We may have to do some things. We may have to defer Social Security for a year. We may have to do some things that will help you meet your goals and objectives. But those can be difficult conversations, but they're conversations that need to occur.
And it's not just the taxes that can ruin, it's how much money you spend. Because all those commercials we used to have back in the day, or all the people in our world that give blanket advice will say you need a certain number to save for retirement. If they don't know how much money you're spending and where you're going to spend it, and if you want to do this, that, and the other in retirement, that is terrible advice to follow, because every person spends a different amount in retirement. When you spend within your means and you're so hyper-focused on saving for the future, it's terrifying to now know that that money you save for the future is what you get to spend. And when you've spent maybe beyond your means or you haven't saved enough, it's just as hard to break that habit as it is to break the habit of saving to spending. So we see that more often than not.
We've been talking about a lot of the small moves that could really derail a retirement plan. And now we need to talk about that one word, that ugly word. But it's a reality of life and it's not going away. We're talking about taxes. Let's talk taxes.
Well, Mark, you mentioned that we do have some fun on our podcast. And one of the things that we experience this time of year in particular, as we approach March 15th and April 15th, is something that's not fun, and that is cutting a check for those taxes. Mm-hmm. So cutting a check for those taxes can be painful. It can be very, very painful while you're working. But you know when it's going to be more painful?
What's that?
If you don't plan for it properly in retirement. When you look at what you're making, what you're bringing in, the one thing you need to be cognizant of is how much is actually going to end up in your pocket. It doesn't matter how much you earn. It's how much you take home. Mm-hmm. It's how much you take home after tax, after paying the IRS their fair share. And believe me, we want everyone to pay their fair share, but no more than that. When we say that, there is a way to plan for your taxation in retirement. And planning for taxation is probably the biggest thing that we can come to the table with that sets us apart from most other firms that do investment planning.
At the end of the day, most people don't think about tax planning at all because they've never heard it. They don't understand what that means. They're so ingrained in taxes. To me, just means tax preparation. And yes, tax preparation is important, needs to be done by March 15th or April 15th, depending upon what tax return we're doing each year. It is important to file a tax return and pay our fair share of taxes to the IRS. But what we find to be maybe more so important is to plan for that taxation in advance. When you go to prepare a return, we're looking at history. Can't really change much about our history. Mm-hmm. When we look at tax planning, we're planning for the future so that you simply get to live the plan and you don't have a surprise come April 15th. Now, Gerry mentioned, it can be kind of tough to cut those checks. Think about how tough it would be if this is your first year in retirement and you think you're going to be just fine when you go to tax time, and now you have to take additional taxable money out to pay for a tax bill you didn't plan for. What we do here is full service holistic planning. So as we're planning for your retirement, and you're going to have a withdrawal strategy for your assets in your retirement, that strategy is going to take taxation into account because we want to ensure that you're planning for the taxation and not having a surprise when it comes to tax time. So that's the first form of tax planning we're going to do is, you don't want to have those nasty surprises. And when you're on a fixed income in retirement and money is coming in, we help you strategize with that money and those investments and those plans to ensure that you're withholding enough taxation so you don't have a surprise come April 15th. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to tax planning, because that is only planning for next year. We also plan for the taxation for the rest of your life. And long-term tax planning is really going to look at quite a few different things to ensure that you're setting yourself up for the most tax efficient future possible. So it might involve something small like the proper withdrawal strategy or the proper amount of risk for each of your investments. You take more risk in this investment because it'll cause less taxation in the future. We take less risk in this investment because it's going to cause less taxation in the future. If you don't do any form of tax planning, and you don't know how much money you're going to spend in taxation in retirement, you're not alone. But if you do want to walk through that, let's say you have a majority of your money saved in your 401k and an IRA, traditional IRA status for the future. And you might be in your first year of retirement starting to plan this out. Well, is there anything you can do? If you don't do any planning of any kind, you may spend a couple $1 million on taxes in your lifetime. Because when we put it all together, we see that a lot of people do spend more money on taxation than they really realize. But what you don't know is if you could change your withdrawal strategy, or if you might change the strategy of risk and the withdrawal strategy of the assets that you've saved, you may be able to save yourself more than $1 million in taxation. So small little changes can have a big impact in your financial future. But I don't expect you to be as big of a tax nerd as the two of us, to sit here, to crunch all the numbers, to figure out exactly what pieces of the puzzle go together and how much taxation is going to hit you in the future. Most people would not find that exciting. Gerry and I are not most people. We do find that exciting. So
we live for that.
We do.
truly
And we'd
live for that.
love to put that jigsaw puzzle together for you simply by calling us at 314-207-6211. We can start the process of putting all those jigsaw pieces together. We don't expect you to do it on your own, but we do want you to be fully informed and aware so you can make educated decisions. Because if something as small as the withdrawal order of where you're pulling your assets from, the income from out of your assets in retirement, if that can make $1 million difference, don't you want to keep $1 million in your pocket and out of the IRS's?
Yeah, I'll be okay with that.
Heidi just mentioned that's one little bitty tweak that has a huge impact. There are multiple other ideas that we can bring to the table. But in order to understand what those are, we need to understand what and what impact they may have on you. We need to understand how you're investing, what you're investing in, what your goals and objectives are, and what your legacy plan is, how much you're spending, all those things that go into a full holistic retirement plan. And a lot of people talk about holistic retirement plan, but they don't talk about taxation. You can't talk about holistic planning without talking about taxation and how it affects you tax-wise, because we all have to focus on our biggest expense in our lifetime and seeing if we can reduce that biggest expense, and that is taxation. So if you want to learn a little bit more about how that impacts you, call us at 314-207-6211 or reach out at rickenfinancial.com. We would love to have that conversation because, as Heidi said, we are tax nerds with a personality.
We are, but we're also financial planners. And, as we manage your assets, we can provide better service and better care for you when it comes to your taxation. So some people will call us and they'll say, this is the piece I'm missing. I need someone to talk about the taxes and how to accommodate that in the future. Well, if we don't manage the assets, we have very little control over how things are going to be structured, and tax planning is not going to be very effective for you because we want to ensure that if we're going to put a tax plan together, we actually work that plan together too. It's not just a nebulous strategy that you can think of and potentially implement in the future. We want those numbers to work for you as hard as you've worked for your assets your entire life. We want them to work harder for you in retirement. And when we put some tax plans in place, that means we're going to be managing the funds that you have and ensuring that we're following that tax plan each step of the way.
So when we talk about taxation, there are multiple avenues that you could do research on and try to do this on your own. We wouldn't suggest that because you can make a mistake and it could cost you a lot of money. We have our thumb on the pulse of the tax code each and every day. We get updates daily on what changes are happening in the tax code. Some of them apply to our clients, some of them don't. But we weed through all that, and then we are able to actually implement those with our clientele and save them in taxes. And why wouldn't you do that? But if you would like to learn a little bit more about that, just look at our website at rickenfinancial.com. We have events that occur throughout the year. A lot of them are focused specifically on taxation in retirement to determine whether or not you can live tax-free in retirement. I said live tax-free in retirement because that is possible. So we have seminars. Please just look at what's out there and what's available. Sign up for one. Come and attend and see if we are a good fit for you.
And just know this is just the tip of the iceberg because we can't give specific advice out on the radio since we don't know what your specific situation is until you meet with us. But we'd love to chat and see if we might help you plan forward for your taxation. Just simply give us a call at 314-207-6211.
Well, Heidi, Ricken, Provost, Gerry, Ricken, as always, thank you for the education and the information this weekend. We are back next weekend, but before we get out of here, and take us home.
Every day is a holiday.
Life is short. Laugh hard.
This has been Kickin' with the Rickens, redefining retirement.
Insurance products are offered through the insurance business Ricken Financial LLC. Ricken Financial LLC is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth LLC, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by Ricken Financial LLC are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Ricken Financial LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Ricken Financial LLC.
Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.
Tax preparation and tax advisory services are offered through Ricken Financial. These services are not offered by IPW and are not subject to investment advisor requirements. These services referenced are an outside business activity not offered through or supervised by IPW.